Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Isabel and this is my library. Today I will be talking to you about classics. Classics. So many of us have conflicting emotions when it comes to reading the classics. Some of us feel that classics can be intimidating or daunting or very old or lengthy books. And I'm here to share with you that classics don't necessarily have to be super intimidating. There are plenty of classics that are approachable and a good starting place for someone who's never read one before. So I'd like to first consider a little bit what defines a classic or what makes a book a modern classic. So in order for us to begin talking about classics, we have to consider a couple elements. Normally, a classic is a book that is considered literary merit. Now, what exactly does that mean? Well, classics normally have connections to the human experience. In themes, in archetypes, and ideologies, they're basically books where everyone can find a connecting point. Everyone who reads them, regardless of their age, their background, what part of the world they're from, they can find something that they can extract from a classic and that they can feel at home with. And that's the beauty of classics. And that's why one of the requirements for a classic is that they be timeless, that they stand the test of time, and that they be relatable. Some of the books on the list I will be sharing with you today are older, but some are newer classics or classics in the making. And a lot of times we want to consider, what can we learn from these, or how can we connect as members of the human race with the classics we are reading? I wanted today to present to you 10 books that I find are a great starting point for anyone who's interested in reading more classics. This is volume 1 of what I hope to make a series of where to start with classics. So join me for some great conversations about some of my very favorite introductory classics. At the top of my list, we have The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros. In this Bildungsroman, or coming-of-age story, we're following Esperanza, who is a young girl that has recently moved into Mango Street, and this basically chronicles her growing up or loss of innocence story. My favorite part, or what I think is the most approachable thing about this classic, is the fact that it is written in vignettes. So its narrative form is not one continuous long novel, but rather little stories or vignettes about different aspects of Esperanza's life. One of my favorite parts of The House on Mango Street is the vignette entitled My Name. And I'll read you a small part. In English, my name means hope. In Spanish, it means too many letters. It means sadness. It means waiting. It is like the number 9, a muddy color. It is the Mexican records my father plays on Sunday mornings when he is shaving. Songs like Sob. The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros. Number 2 on my list is The Crucible by Arthur Miller. In this play, we are following a group of characters living during the Salem witch trials, so time period being 1692. In this play, the protagonist, John Proctor, has committed adultery with one of the young girls in the community, Abigail Williams. In this play, we slowly start to see how Abigail Williams decides to seek revenge on John Proctor in the form of accusing him and his wife and everyone else in town of being witches. This is one of the most interesting, dynamic, hysterical reads you will find. One of my favorite lines is from John Proctor. Because it is my name, because I cannot have another in my life, because I lie and sign myself to lies, because I am not worth the dust on the feet of them that hang. How may I live without my name? I have given you my soul, leave me my name. This is The Crucible by Arthur Miller. Next on my list is The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. In this existentialist novella, we are following Gregor Samsa, who is a son, who is a hardworking businessman, and one morning when he wakes up and is getting ready to leave the comfort of his bed and go to work, he finds that somehow overnight he has transformed into a human-sized Berman. What follows is his story and his trying to make sense of the world around him and trying to communicate to his family members that although he physically looks very different, he is still the same person he's always been on the inside. In this existentialist piece, we see the most interesting of theories explored. There's metaphors for what life is, how much of the way we physically look translates to who we are on the inside, so on and so forth. One of my favorite lines is the opening sequence. As Gregor Samsa awoke from unsettling dreams one morning, he found himself transformed in his bed into a monstrous vermin. The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. Next on my list is Carmilla by Sheridan Le Fanu. In this very short novella, we are following a young girl named Laura who lives with her father in this beautiful castle. In this haunting tale, we know that Laura is very lonely. She does not have a mother figure, she doesn't really have any friends, and she longs for companionship. One day, after an accident, into her door steps Carmilla. What follows is this blossoming friendship between Carmilla and Laura, and the haunting feeling that Laura has that some way, somehow, she's met Carmilla before. And very quickly, the reader is able to perceive that Carmilla is not very human, but rather exhibits qualities of a vampire. In this sapphic vampire story, we have this incredibly beautiful and haunting atmosphere, and there's all sorts of themes that are brought up by the author. Carmilla predates Dracula and many times is overlooked as one of the leading books in the vampire genre. Next on my list is The House of Bernarda Alba by Federico Garcia Lorca. This play takes place in Spain during the 1930s. We are following the matriarch of the family, Bernarda Alba, who lives with her 5 daughters. Bernarda is recently widowed and truly a tyrant. She is forcing everyone in her household, all of her daughters, to mourn the loss of the father and stepfather to some of the girls for the next 8 years. What follows is the rebellion of one of the daughters, the youngest daughter, Adela. Adela wants freedom. She longs to experience love and refuses to let her mother control her life. One of my favorite lines from The House of Bernarda Alba is, "My blood is no longer your blood. I try to think of you as a sister, but I only know you as a woman. I can't stand the horror of this house anymore, not for knowing the taste of his mouth. I will be what he wants me to be, with the whole town against me, branding me with the fiery fingers, persecuted by people who claim to be decent, and right in front of them, I will put on a crown of thorns, like any mistress of a married man." The House of Bernarda Alba by Federico Garcia Lorca. Next on my list is The Zoo Story by Edward Albee. In this existentialist play, we follow 2 men, Jerry and Peter, and what seems to be a random encounter of a moment shared in a park bench. Jerry's desperate need for intimacy and human connection leads him to commit the most atrocious of crimes. In this absurdist play, we are constantly wondering the extent of the consequences of our actions and the desperate need for humans to make sense of the world around them. One of my favorite lines in The Zoo Story is, "What I'm going to tell you has something to do with how sometimes it's necessary to go a long distance out of the way in order to come back a short distance correctly." Zoo Story by Edward Albee. Next on my list is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. In this great American classic, we are following Jay Gatsby. So, in his attempt to make something of himself, Jay Gatsby reinvents himself as a person in order to win the heart of Daisy Buchanan. In this tale, Jay Gatsby is eager to be reunited with the love of his life, Daisy. Although time has passed since they were a couple, he feels like life will be the same if he can only see her again and prove to her that he has now made something of himself and he's worthy of her love. However, he comes back to find that Daisy has not only moved on with her life, but is unwilling to compromise her values and her needs for success. In this very sad story, we have a protagonist that faces the inevitable dread that comes with the failure of the American dream. One of my favorite lines of The Great Gatsby is, he broke off and began to walk up and down a desolate path of fruit rinds and discarded favors and crushed flowers. I wouldn't ask too much of her, I ventured. You can't repeat the past. Can't repeat the past? He cried incredulously. Why, of course you can. This is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Next on my list is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. In this beautiful circular setting novel, we are following Santiago, who is a young boy and a shepherd. One day, Santiago has a dream that he will find fortune if he were to travel to the pyramids. He seeks the advice of a fortune teller who tells him to sell his sheep and travel the world and find the pyramids, and he will eventually surely find fortune. What follows is his journey towards finding his fortune, his many adventures and lessons learned. A lot of times we wonder what truly is our treasure or our purpose in life, and that is exactly what this book explores. One of my favorite lines from The Alchemist is, "The boy felt jealous of the freedom of the wind and saw that he could have the same freedom. There was nothing to hold him back except himself. The sheep, the merchant's daughter, and the fields of Andalusia were only steps along the way to his personal legend." The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. Next on my list is The Death of a Salesman by Arthur Miller. In this play, we are following Willie Noman, an older businessman who is still working very hard despite the fact that he's not the person he used to be. He seems to be plagued by Alzheimer's or dementia, and his inability to make sense of the world around him or distinguish between his memories, the past, and the present. Willie longs to continue providing for his family, yet his inability to do so is incredibly frustrating. He is starting to see that he can no longer give his family what they deserve, and this very quickly turns into his biggest nightmare. As he confronts his wife and his children and his unresolved guilt from his past decisions, Willie comes to the understanding that all his dreams do not come true, and that many times everything he has worked so hard for is gone in a matter of moments. One of my favorite lines from this play is from Willie Loman. "Funny, you know, after all the highways and the trains and the appointments and the years, you end up worth more dead than alive." This is the incredibly sad play, Death of a Salesman by Arthur Miller. The last book on my list is The Awakening by Kate Chopin. In this feminist piece, we are following Edna Pontellier, who is a 28-year-old woman married to Léonce Pontellier and mother to two children, Raoul and Etienne. After one summer spent at Grand Isle, their vacationing spot, she meets Robert Lebrun. She also meets Mademoiselle Rise and other characters that impact her life and transform the way she views the world. Once this awakening process has started, Edna Pontellier begins to question her position in the universe and her role in life. One of my favorite lines of The Awakening is, "The voice of the sea is seductive, never ceasing, whispering, clamoring, murmuring, inviting the soul to wander for a spell in abysses of solitude, to lose itself in mazes of inward contemplation. The voice of the sea speaks to the soul. The touch of the sea is sensuous, enfolding the body in its soft, close embrace." The Awakening by Kate Chopin. So there you have it, guys. These are 10 classics that I think would make a great start for your journey into reading more classics. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have read any of these classics, if you enjoyed them or didn't enjoy them, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. I will continue preparing to make a second volume of slightly longer works of classics that I think are a great entry point for any beginner. Till next time, guys, have a great one. Bye-bye.